Experts call it the digital divide. That's the gap between Canadians who have access to reliable internet and those who don't. It's an issue that's become more severe after the pandemic hit Canada, and one that is increasingly worrisome as our kids are heading back to school. Joining us this morning with more is the Executive Director of Open Media, Laura Tribe. Welcome to Your Morning.
Thanks for having me.
Let's take a look at this 2019 report by the CRTC. They found broadband service was available to almost all urban households, but only 40% of rural households, 31% of First Nations reserves. So what does that mean for kids who are in those communities and those who are either learning from home or trying to use internet while they're at school?
I mean, that's the starting point for who has those services available, right? So when you're looking in First Nations communities and rural communities, those students are already disadvantaged at the opportunity to do online learning going back to school, but also have had significantly less chances to stay connected with their teachers, with their colleagues, as they have gone through this school year from March till now. And so when you look at the disadvantage in the ability to both have the internet, but also, there's a number who can't afford it, even if it's available. That number is even greater than I think a lot of us in urban areas realize.
I want to give people a visual reference of what it looks like about broadband service right across the country. So if we can bring up that map, you'll see there are large areas that are just not covered, where it's just not accessible. So why are these areas still not connected with reliable internet? What's the challenge there?
So we heard from the federal government in March of last year, 2019, which feels a long time away, but was not that far away, that they are planning on connecting everyone by 2030. The plan to date from the federal government really has been to wait for companies to invest, to hope that companies like Bell, TELUS, or Rogers will invest in those areas over time. But the problem is that when they're not really dense, it's actually quite expensive to invest there without a strong market incentive that they're going to make their money back really quickly. And so that's where we've seen the government say they need to step in to actually subsidize that, but it hasn't quite happened yet to actually take that plan into action.
Well, to help fill that gap, some school boards have actually taken action into their own hands. They introduced computer loan programs, and the federal government, they did commit to connecting all Canadians with reliable internet, but that's not until 2030, so we're 10 years away from that. What can families do in the meantime? We are days away from school starting. A lot of people either not able to return to the classroom or choosing not to. What can they do to make sure that there is equity in their learning?
It's really hard for those families because they're already at a disadvantage. So we've seen school boards trying to hand out devices. We've seen that they've, in some cases, been given devices that still don't have access to the internet itself. So that keeps them disconnected. I think for families, they're already doing everything that they can. What we really need is for governments and for the boards to actually step up and make sure that those students are not left behind. Not just because a lot of them have to choose the in-person option for back to school because they don't have the alternative of online, but if and as self-isolation and quarantines and school shutdowns continue, these students are going to continue to be disadvantaged. They don't have a library to go to right now because they're closed. And so making sure that those students are the first ones to have access to additional services as they come up, that if there are additional devices, they're being shared to those families first and foremost, recognizing that not everyone's starting school on the same foot.
No, and we even experienced this in our household. We have 3 kids there. My husband is working from home. And when you're supposed to be on a Zoom call and learning and you can't, it doesn't access fast enough, you might as well just be taking a kid and putting them out in the hallway. That's what not allowing them access to the internet does. During the pandemic, we saw internet rates increase. But there were big internet service providers, including Rogers, TELUS, and Bell, which owns this network. They also rolled out various forms of relief measures for the pandemic, like removing internet data caps. But what then still needs to be done as we head into this new school year?
Well, one of the troubles with a lot of those measures is that they were short-term. So we saw data caps removed across a number of ISPs until the end of June, which really doesn't get at the back-to-school needs, and it still doesn't put devices in the hands of kids. In addition to the fact, as you mentioned, that internet prices have actually had to go up over the past little while, and we will see increases over the coming months because of a recent government decision. And so I think there's a lot that the government can do and should do to actually require and provide relief for people on their internet rates to make sure that they can afford the internet that they can get. But also there needs to be a lot of rapid deployment of the projects that are ready to go in those areas that are underserved. Because as you mentioned, sitting in the hallway is basically the equivalent of a Zoom call that won't load, except that you don't even get to see your kids after, or your schoolmates after class. And so I think we really need to make sure that those students, again, are given first and foremost priority, with government stepping in to make sure there's actually access to affordable internet.
Yeah, anybody who has technology knows you may have a piece of equipment with you, but if you don't have the data to run it, it's useless. Laura Tribe, it's a really important issue, and thanks for delving into it for us.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching. If you like this, be sure to subscribe here.
And you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.